those. Escape gets harassed now by Ambrose. He gets a sniff up the inside here. Marcus has a look. Can't quite get the job done. It's very bumpy in that part of the circuit. It's hard to quickly change the direction of the car. Escape's on a bit of a defending mission here, initially from Murphy, now from Ambrose. Well, this could end up in tears. The right-hander at 8, very shallow through his approach run in there.
Wrong way, Marcus, just keep it calm.
The message goes to Marcus. Just breathe easy. Escape wasn't prepared to yield at all, went right across to the other side of the road, perfectly able to do that, unless, of course, Ambrose starts to get alongside, and then that changes the way in which the rules are interpreted.
Those two had a great fight throughout season 2002, Scaife and Ambrose. Most of it was done in the shootouts, believe it or not. They ended up all square at the end of the season with 5 pole positions each.
It's a long race, mate.
It's now history that Mark Scaife ended up with the championship and Marcus Ambrose ended up 3rd overall. He was the best of the Fords. Look at John Bowe just pushing the Kmart Commodore of Rick Kelly over to the right-hand side of the track.
And that wrong puts Rick into the dirty side of the track at the wrong time, makes him vulnerable to the Valvoline car of Garth Panda, who now has a look up the inside. He's got the rears locked a little bit, but I think he'll make it stick, and does. Now, he said on the grid that he thought he had pretty good race pace, and Rick has a look again on the inside when they go through the left-hander at 5. Grant?
Well, Rob Crawford, Murph sounds almost as passionate as that 5-minute penalty that he got at Bathurst.
I don't think so. He made a little bit of a mistake off the start line, and obviously the penalty for that's drive-through, so he's got that fairly cleanly, and we'll just change the strategy and see what we can make out of it.
From the back to the front, can you do it?
Well, it's been done before. We'll just have to see if we're good enough to do it.
Good stuff. Thanks.
And the thing that Rob will be looking for is some safety car field compression to try and get some gain out of that. And of course, one of the changes this year is that you can make your stop under the safety car in this race.
Marcus Ambrose has the fastest lap, a 1:24.189.
24.1's pretty good on a heavy load of fuel, so Ambrose has got good pace, and he saw evidence of that when he was harassing the back of Mark. John Bowe's trundling along pretty well here in 7th as well. We'll go through them for you. Jason Bright, Mark Scaife, Marcus Ambrose, as we take the shot from above Russell Ingall's car. Quickest lap now, again lowered by Ambrose to a 23.9. Stephen Richards in 4th, Stephen Johnson 5th, Todd Kelly, John Bowe, Garth Panda, Rick Kelly, this man Russell Ingall, then McConville 11, Seaton 12, Paul Dumbrell, Dean Canto, Paul Morris, Craig Lowndes is 16.
You can see the yellow chips there on your screen. Rick Kelly has moved up 3 positions since the start. And throughout the race, you'll be able to keep an eye on your favourite driver, or maybe your opponent, if you like, and see exactly whether he's going up or down. On board with the Enforcer. He takes on Bartels Road.
He's 10th, and last lap was a 25.1 for Russell Ingall, so giving away a bit of pace at the moment, buried in that traffic, as Ambrose again just motions towards the inside. This is the hairpin right-hander, the slowest corner on the track, just a whisker above 60 kilometres per hour, with a full load of fuel. Sometimes, depending on what sort of a run you get in the traffic, you may need to use first gear to get out. Drivers prefer to use second to try and nurse the rear tyre a little bit. And I understand that Murphy's going to come in and do tyres on this lap. Confirmation of the quickest lap from Ambrose at a 23.9 on lap 5. That's great pace. Remember, the car's heavy.
So the only incident really to speak of so far has been a penalty, an infringement from Greg Murphy. Dropped him right back down to 30th position. He started from 4th on the grid.
Marcus looks pretty racy early, doesn't he? He's got good pace in this car in a couple of really critical places. Car number 45 has also copped a pit lane speeding infringement.
That's Jason Richards.
Yep, and they've had a pretty tough weekend with some big repairs on their cars this weekend. They've had a test out at Mallala earlier in the week. They were pretty happy when they came away from that. Team Dynamic based in South Australia with a lot of local enthusiasts and fans backing their efforts, and we've got Simon Wills and Jason Richards in that car, those cars.
Well, Mark Scaife has closed the gap on Jason Bright, who got off to a flyer in the first couple of laps. We're on lap 7 of 78. The last time they crossed the start-finish line, it was 1.47 seconds between Bright and Scaife. Will get a chance as he comes through turn 13. lines up the Mistral hairpin and rejoins pit straight. See what the difference is here. He's very settled in this VX Commodore, the same car that he had from last season, Jason Bright. Now the difference is almost a second flat, so he's picked up half a second, Skate.
And Bright just a little slower on that lap, and it's allowed both these two guys to get back in touch a little bit. He was actually 0.4 slower, so you can't afford to give that kind of chunk away too often or they'll be all over you. That's the best part of half a second. What you have to be very careful of in this phase of the race, Matthew, is in particular with a lot of fuel over the back of the car, locking up an inside front. And this track, as we look at Max Wilson coming in for a stop, very easy to do tyre damage, very bumpy. Rusty?
Guys, I can tell you, I've spoken to Dean Orr, crew chief for Dick Johnson Racing. They've got a problem with the left rear here too. They are having trouble getting the wheel nut off. This is going to be a costly stop. It was planned that they would bring Max in now to try and get him out of sync with the rest of the field so he can do some clear laps. 15 seconds gone, a long stop for DJR.
And Greg, what they're attempting to do there is removing from the bunch. If you can get clear air running, even if you don't ultimately have sensational car speed, clear air running can really impact your net overall performance in a motor race. And so strategically what they'll have done is thought about where this would place him back in the motor race after they've serviced the car, despite the fact that the left rear was a problem. And now he's got a clean, clear track to get on with it. If the car does have any pace in it, and he's had a pretty difficult weekend, they had some gearbox problems with that car. If it does have pace in it, as Russell Ingall has a look on the inside, makes contact with Bow and turns Bow around, and damage on the front left corner of Russell's car. This will put a little bit of chaos into the pack here. They're at turn 14, and it'll be worth looking at that one again. So what sort of damage is also on the front? Someone talking about having crooked steering, which is not unusual. Contact has been made. A lot of damage on the front left corner of Ingall's car.
Well, Russell Ingall effectively didn't lose too many positions. He's in 11th. Glenn Seaton's in front of him in 10th. But John Bower, courtesy of this, has tumbled all the way down.
Here it is. So Russell gets... Oh, well, it's actually an awkward one. It looks to begin with as though he's a long way up, but as the arc changes with John coming in from the outside, the two of them make pretty heavy contact. You can see John's totally out there on the left on the race line. Russell sees it as an opportunity, probably thinks he's got the job done, and all of a sudden life is all green and ends up tagging him at about the right rear, and round goes the Aussie male entry.
A little psychological war going on inside these two cockpits as well. When Jason Bright moved out of Holden Racing Team, he said to me one of the biggest things about the perception of being in HRT is that you win races and win rounds simply because you are at HRT. And he said to me, that's a wrong perception for a start, but nonetheless the perception's there. If you can win
for the traffic up ahead.
at a team like Team Brock that's just been assembled and they've hand-picked their own staff and built their own cars, then you're really earning it. So he's already started the war of words from Jason Bright. No love lost between him and Mark Skaife. Marcus Ambrose is holding on to third position. Down into the top 10, you can see Russell Ingall there. Seaton just knocking on the door. Craig Lowndes has moved up to position number 12. He started down in 18th position. So the BA Falcon out of FPR has moved up 6 spots.
He was pretty happy with his car in the warm-up this morning, and he ended up being 7th quickest, and the car was behaving pretty well. And their biggest problem yesterday was just that they had this brake bias thing happening. So I think you'll find that if they pull a reasonable strategy in this race, he could buy a ticket into the game a little bit later on. Further down the order, this is Stephen Johnson in 5th at the moment, and he's got Todd Kelly tucked in behind. These guys have actually been at it for quite a few laps as well, and Stephen Johnson's car's actually looked pretty strong all weekend. Todd now closes up under brakes down into the hairpin, but the camera foreshortens it a little bit. He's not quite there. That gap between the leaders is back out to 0.8 between Bright and Skaife, and it's right about now 15 laps down into this event, and the sweat's well and truly started to run down the brow, and it's getting hot in the car, and you think 78 laps.
Not as hot as the previous years that we've had, Cromley, and I'm sure you can expand on that a lot better than I can, because every time we've come here over the last couple of years, we've had the fact that you guys will be pouring litres and litres of water into your system to combat the 50, 60 degrees inside the cockpit. No question that it's cooler, lots of cloud cover here.
It certainly makes a huge difference, Matthew. It makes a massive difference when you start out with a better number to begin with, because you can essentially add about 25 or 30 degrees to the ambient temperature to end up with what the ultimate cockpit temperature is. And you know, when you already start with a hot day, like early in the week here, for example, where it was well in the 30s, when you add another 25 or 30 degrees to that and then rug yourself up and set about some exercise, it gets ugly. Now, Paul Morris was actually shown the meatball flag earlier, which means that something was hanging off the car and you need to report to the pit to have that damage rectified. And he looks as though he's either made contact with a car or something else, maybe a tyre bundle or something on the circuit, and they're now taping up the splitter on the front of the car. And we'll see what's going on here, and the whole front end of the car dancing around. So that'll be as a result of either contact with another competitor, maybe he's climbed a curb, maybe he's hit a tyre bundle, something like that, and they've had to tape it all on. Obviously this is burning away critical time for these guys, and he was running, I think he was running somewhere in about just outside the top 10. That cone marker at turn 2 is getting the living daylights pounded out of it at the moment. I just saw a glimpse of it in the background there, and it looks as though it's about half its original size. We're only 18 laps into this thing so far.
You know what, in qualifying they had one out there. They played a little bit of a trick with the drivers, the officials. They had one out there that was exactly the same. The thing was that it was a lot thinner. So they put the thin one out there first, let the drivers bash it senseless and see how easy it came out. Now they've put a thicker one out there. It's around about half an inch thick, if you like. It's just sheer plastic, but when you've got these massive V8 supercar machines roaring across the top of it, it's not going to last for long. They will try and replace it during a safety car period if it does come off, and if it does come off and they can't replace it, there's one thing that these guys will not be allowed to do, and that's put 4 wheels across that curve. Darryl Beattie.
Yeah, Matty, I've been standing outside the HRT pit here, and what hasn't gone unnoticed is that Mark Scaife guys aren't just watching him closely, but they're watching Ambrose's car, and especially Marcus seems to be fighting a lot of oversteer, which these guys are talking amongst themselves, and they're quite impressed with that because Scaife's actually pulling 3 or 4 tenths a lap now on Marcus and closing in.
It's interesting to observe that, Darryl, because in the initial laps of the race, it was Marcus that looked as though he had the pace and was threatening. You can see there in the background that that margin's beginning to open up quite substantially. And this is still relatively early in the tyre life cycle, so for him to be drifting backwards like that is not a good sign. The margin first to second is 0.6 of a second, and then it's 3.1 back to Marcus Ambrose in position 3. Stephen Richards, Stephen Johnson, Todd Kelly, Garth Tander, Rick Kelly, Cameron McConville inside the top 10 now, and Wally Story engineering that car's made some steps forward in the balance and the turn capabilities of that car. He's been playing around with shock absorbers, and Tander's in the wall there. Huge problem down there, turn 1 and 2. And there was stuff all over the road, and Tander obviously had it parked up on the wall there, and a few other guys were getting tangled up in all that. So one of the things that you've got to be so careful of in this motor race is that, and it's Murphy who's actually been in and now rejoining again.
We might follow him through turn 1. You'll see exactly what happened to the other guys. Garth Tander complained about garbage all over the road. Now that cone is effectively gone. Look at those pebbles everywhere. So somebody has gone straight through there.
Yeah, and dragged all the garbage up on there. And the point that I was about to make on a street circuit, actually, there's something coming out of Morris's car, I think, Ben. There was something that was actually spraying off the back of car 29, because it was Garth that brought the rubble up. There was something in the braking area that actually unsettled him before he got that far. Or am I daydreaming? No, I reckon there's something. You can see something out of the front right corner.
It got him well before the turn, and as Garth Tander went careering over to the wall, the other guys had to take evasive action, and I don't think we'll get to see it on this replay, but certainly Paul Dumbrell
may not have
come through commando style.
It may not have been Morris's car, but the point that I was trying to get to earlier is that often in this race, for some reason, it's an event and a track where you end up with stuff on the road. I think it's because of the amount of curb hopping people do damage to things, and you come around a corner and you're fully committed, all of a sudden there's some glycol on the road or a little bit of oil or whatever, and because there's nowhere to go, the outcome can be catastrophic. There was definitely something there that upset Tander's car on the way in, because he would be in a rhythm and it would be very unusual to get crossed up like that.
Stephen Ellery comes in. Not only do you talk about the stuff getting on the road and not being able to get out of the way of it, because this is a concrete canyon from where to go, it's effectively, there's nowhere for the junk to go, if you like. I mean, there's not that many pebbles out there that are going to chip up into the windscreen.
Guys, the shock's broken.
Oh, dear. Problem with the Ellery car, the super cheap autos Ford Falcon, and there's a problem with the shock absorber. And again, it's all related to curb hopping. There's so much pounding across curbs and traffic islands here. And Greg will obviously be in there shortly and get more of the story from Stephen Ellery. Greg, what have you got?
Well, down here, guys, it looks like there's some damage to the front right, as you've heard the guys talking on the radio. Stephen, how did it happen?
Not 100% sure, but just going around the track, felt something wrong in the front suspension. I hit that curb pretty hard down here in turn 1, and it seems to have broken.
Perhaps those curbs are taking their toll, Neil.
Yeah, just spoken to Gary Rogers. Garth Tander spoke to him on the radio and said he believes there was something coming out of Morris's car. No damage to his, he's going to carry on, but obviously with a spin at that speed, they could have flat spotted the tyres, so they're going to watch that.
Brad Jones comes into pit lane on lap 21 of 78. We're starting to get a little bit more action.
And I don't think they were fully organised and prepared for that.
Change the tyres!
That's
You've got to be ready, guys. You've got to be ready.
Well, they're certainly not ready for that one. I mean, they're still dancing around trying to get the rattle guns out.
This one's not going to help Bradley's sense of humour. It's been a pretty ordinary weekend for him. He hasn't been able to get into a satisfactory position with the setup of the car. Yesterday, they had a fire just before their what's called the media ride session, where they take people for a run in the VIPs and sponsors and what have you for a run in the car. And then that meant that there was a huge job last night till I think about 2:30 this morning to actually get it running and get everything repaired. It burnt an awful lot of stuff under the bonnet, and he's just had the world's longest pit stop, and actually he's got some damage to the right rear there as well. And Kim's saying be ready in case there's something else, because very often what happens is you'll go out and you'll still have a drama of some description and come straight back in. If everybody relaxes and goes back in the garage, it recycles the whole nightmare. In fact, it was only a few years ago that you know, we've seen people get in all sorts of strife here by not being prepared, because really at this event almost anything can go wrong with the car, and you need to have instant access to your people and your bits.
Well, one of the good things that Brad Jones Racing got out of 2002 was that if Brad had this kind of weekend, it was more often than not that John didn't. So they managed to tiptoe around the major problems and at least get a good performance on the board. Right now, they're both locked in 31 and 32 position.
Change of position.
He's got it on lap 22.
Scaife is now leading the motor race in car number 1, and Jason Bright is back in second place. So while we were in the pit area, there's been some manoeuvring made, and Mark Scaife gets him on the inside under brakes down at the hairpin. Good clean move, real tight, tough racing, but he gets away with it. So he chipped away, and he's done it on lap 22 of 78. Here's a replay from on board. Dives to the apex. He's got a little bit of carry speed just at the right time. Gets track position. That's what he needs. Once he gets track position, it doesn't really matter. And he's got up alongside the B-pillar and beyond, and away he goes.
Rewind 12 months ago, those two guys went into that same corner in the same coloured cars with the same team, but Jason Bright had his watch linkage broken and his rear wheel wiggling all over the place. So this time Mark Scaife gets him under clean racing as Stephen Johnson comes in for what looked like a nice clean pit stop. That's one of the things that Dean Orr was telling me down there at Shell Helix Racing. They just want to be consistent today. They want to set themselves up for Sunday racing, and they want to forget about the dramas of last year. If they can get through with their noses clean, 78 laps today, that'll be a good tick in the box for them today.
And some of what you're seeing here at the moment is just wake-up call stuff. We're back in business. It's not, when you go testing, you do a couple of laps at a time. And, you know, the last time that everybody really pounded around for a long, long time out the circuit was Sandown last year. It was the first week of December. It's a long time ago, and you've got to get back in the groove, and it's everybody across the entire organisation. Every element has got to work perfectly and coordinate perfectly in order to be able to get a result with these teams and cars. So when any one little thing goes wrong somewhere, it comes unglued very readily, very easily. A drive-through for Greg Murphy for speeding in pit lane has just been judged, and we want to be inside car 51 when that message comes through. The rear bumper's missing off the Rodney Forbes mobile. And
want to buy a ringside ticket for when Murph comes in for his next drive-through penalty.
And you may wonder, someone's got a problem.
Oh, that's Mark Noske with a right front problem as he comes through the sweeper and gets out of trouble. Look at the rubber he's flicking out there. So that thing is chopping itself up. That's happened along Bartels Road somewhere, or maybe even before. Thankfully, it didn't happen at the high speed turn 8, and now he nurses it back. The AU Falcon used to have a familiar guy behind the wheel by the name of Neil Crompton. Now Mark Noske gets back to pit lane on lap 24 of 78. Let's check out our race score. Skate, Bright and Ambrose, Stephen Richards, Todd Kelly, Rick Kelly, Russell Ingall, Craig Lowndes, Glenn Seaton and Paul Dumbrell make up our top 10. The casualties are starting to come. We're getting towards the danger zone.
Position in all this, Darryl, is that Scape has rejoined and he's showing as position 3 on the road at the moment, and Rick Kelly and Craig Lowndes head proceedings. Neither of those guys have stopped for either of the compulsory stops, so in real terms it's Mark Scape that continues to command the event, as you'd expect, because they had a good, clean, efficient stop. And what Ford Performance Racing are banking on here is gaining a little bit of clear air and getting their man up to the front, then getting in and doing an efficient stop, and hopefully climbing their way out of the fact that they qualified poorly and they were down, in 18th, I think, for Craig, this car here.
18th it was,
yeah.
And again, that puts an onus on a brand new team. You've already heard the stories about how Ford Performance Racing were pieced together in the space of just a few weeks. Glenn Seaton Racing was purchased, and of course Ford Performance Racing came into being. Look at Rick Kelly there, really back it off to 40 to make sure that he's not going to suffer the same fate as his teammate Greg Murphy. You saw the PlayStation race score there, and the chips will show you as this race goes on. It indicates exactly what stop they've done. Grant Denya's there for this fuel stop.
Yeah, watch these guys at work, because they are one of the best in pit lane so far. Their pit stop with Murphy just a little earlier on was the fastest at 6.4. Rick Kelly inside was our race leader. Very different approach to this race. Of course, last year was just such a horrific moment for him. Of course, the concrete canyon of this place, a lot of heat, can't be dissipated by the wind because of the walls. And this year, he's a much fitter and much more capable driver.
So Lowndes leads the event now, but he has not stopped for either tyres or fuel. Scape is in second place, then Ambrose, Bright, Stephen Richards, Simon Wills, Todd Kelly, Anthony Tratt, Jamie Whincup and Rick Kelly. That's the top 10. David Bernard's just outside at 11, then Russell Ingall, Greg Ritter, Paul Dumbrell, Glenn Seaton, Max Wilson. Here is the leader, Craig Lowndes, in the Caterpillar entry.
He certainly was a lot happier. We spoke to him at the driver briefing, and he was having all sorts of troubles with this car throughout the qualifying sessions, but made some adjustments this morning and figured out the problem and effectively fixed it for the warm-up. Now they're gambling on his pit crew to bring him home.
Rather than persevere with Craig and get involved in a battle which will cost you time, you get out of it, come in, do the second compulsory stop and get out and get on with the job.
It's also an indication of the race strategy that Jeff Greck and the boys at HRT had worked out already, because this is exactly what he told me. Around 30-35 will probably knock both of them off, assuming all things go correctly. Darryl Beattie.
Yeah, it's been interesting watching these guys, Matty. I just watched them talk here in a huddle. They had previous information out from Adelaide here. They were going through. They said it takes us 30 seconds to do a stop. Now he's going to get held up. Let's do it now. And they ran out and they organised this in a matter of seconds, and their stop's gone pretty well.
And Darryl, that's why they're so good at this business. They react well on their feet. They're ready and gone. And he rejoins. Bright's done exactly the same thing, which is the smart call. And Greg?
Guys, I can tell you that Jason Bright came in at exactly the same time as Mark Scape, as you mentioned, but the thing is, Jason picked up vital time with his pit stop. He pitted in 8.2 seconds, and he got off the jacks quicker than Mark Scape, so that's helped him in pit lane here.
Something lying on the street there. I think
he's got a cold tyre, and he's gone up the end there at turn 4, and he's out-braked himself, and that he might have made some time in the pit lane, but he's thrown it all away on the racetrack there, and that's because he's gone out on cold tyres. He's grabbed the brake in his normal rhythmic position. It's actually locked up across the bumps into 4, and that would have cost him probably the best part of 10 seconds, and that's pretty catastrophic.
So it's probably an 8-second deficit now, because he made up around 2 seconds on Scape in pit lane.
Murphy, who's already had 2 drive-through penalties, and he's taken I think it's his second stop now. And so when we talk about analysing what's going on in the motor race, it's based on some assumptions that things like what just happened to Jason don't happen. So we don't always necessarily have it right. We've got some telltale smoke from the back of the Lounsmobile.
Lap, Craig, pit.
And it was worse then as he flipped it on the downshift. And the word, as you quite well heard, oh, and Rodney Forbes and Brad Jones made contact, and that's at turn 4. And no rear bumper on Rodney's car. That was missing earlier.
Just get up to speed.
And so Craig has a problem with the Cat car. What will that be? You don't always necessarily know with smoke-related stuff. Here is the bright thing. It started on the white paint. He grabbed it. It pulled him to the left. It wanted to drag the car up onto the traffic island. And he's actually done a pretty good job of managing that down. That won't have been such a time loss. I was talking 10 seconds. It wouldn't have been that long.
The earlier he got it, effectively was the better there, because there's the runoff situation as we keep an eye on the Caterpillar Ford out of Ford Performance Racing of Craig Lowndes. They've already told him to pit.
Oh, this looks pretty catastrophic now. It's getting worse. And he's...
I can see why. They've been pit late.
That's Craig on the radio. He's
Marcus Ambrose is following him as well. So effectively a forced pit stop for Craig Lowndes. That'll be his first.
Nice and close.
Marcus Ambrose has already done his for fuel, so he'll come in for tyres.
Sometimes these, when you see a car smoking like this, it's not always necessarily the obvious engine things. It can be power steering, or sometimes one of the things that can take a pounding around here is the differential. You end up often with very high diff and gearbox temperatures around here, so we'll have to monitor the Cat car and find out whether we can get an update. Darryl?
Yes, Marcus Ambrose had an amazing stop, very quick, and obviously watching those new wheel nuts work with some steamers using as well makes it just that much easier.
Those wheel nuts you're talking about are captive in the wheel, and it's all game, set and match here for Lowndes. You can put it in the garage. They're calling for the go jacks, which they slip underneath the thing so that they can turn it round within its own length. And CL is forced to sit out the remainder of this race. It's repairable, then I'm sure they will repair it and get out, because what this team needs, what this car needs, is track miles.
Absolutely, and Craig Lowndes heads into the garage on lap 36 of 78.
Replay here of Bradley and Rodney at turn 4, and the contact made there, and bits of junk scattered on the road. Rodney backs up into the wall there, and it just looked like a classic argument over the same bit of real estate.
This man, Mark Scaife, has just been given a bad sportsmanship warning for curb hopping, and a similar warning to Stephen Johnson in car 17. That'll become a bit of a factor as the race wears on. They're under pressure, these guys.
Well, we told you, Billy, about that bollard, or the cone, if you like, at turn 1 and 2, the centre chicane. It's gone. It's completely gone. They've ruined it. Now, then, this is what happens, and the judges have told these guys, racing officials...
Got to watch them curves, mate. They're onto us, so it's nice and clean now.
And I'll make it official. This is what they were told. Should the cone be displaced, cars are not to consistently place 4 wheels over the curb.
Forbes in the gravel at turn 1.
Well, now you definitely wouldn't want to put 4 wheels over the curb. The left-hand wheels must not drive.
And that'll bring out the safety car, I reckon, and that'll be bad news for Glenn Seaton, who's only done 1 of his stops. Paul Wheel's only done 1. Mark Larkham and Russ Lincoln, Paul Dumbrell have only done 1. Bernard, I don't think he's done any of them at this stage, so that'll give him a terrible headache.
Mark Weiner has only done 1.
Safety car boards are out.
Yeah, there you go. So the safety car board has been displayed, and...
Great stuff, guys. Very good.
So just back to that, what you get is effectively a couple of chances to go through that chicane that you just saw with 2 wheels across the curb. If you start putting 4, you'll get a bad sportsmanship warning. If you start doing it too often, you'll end up with a drive-through penalty. Rodney Forbes lost it well before he got into the chicane and parked the number 7 milk truck into the gravel.
Well, the Ford Performance Race team are all over the Cat Ford. It looks like an oil leak, but can you expand on it, Craig? What's exactly gone on?
Well, I'm not 100% sure, really, Greg. The car was running fine. I looked up into one of your big screens, and I saw a lot of smoke coming out the back. So, really, the guys are going to have a look. But actually, inside the car was running fine.
Realistically, can you get it back out there?
Well, we hope so. Just at least get some testing under our belts and try some new things. Obviously, it's sort of just a bit of a pity.
Thanks, bro. Under safety car conditions, they can hit in 2003 at the Clipsal 500. They all gather up. The race score says that Marcus Ambrose and Mark Scaife have already done both of their compulsory pit stops. That's why they, Jason Bright and Stephen Johnson, get the green box on the race score. The top 10 includes Cameron McConville, who has also done both of his. Dumbrell and Whincup, the youngsters there, in 11th and 12th positions. The Audi safety car is out on the road for the first time in 2003. We will take a break and bring you back to Adelaide right after.
Is back. Game over.
A tremendous battle to the flag.
No overlapping or overtaking until they get past that control line, which is now all go as Marcus Ambrose brings us through on lap 44 of 78. A restart to the Clipsal 500. Scaife, Bright, Richards. There they go. Then some Fords tucked in there behind them as well. Sun has come out as they move up Wakefield Street. Take on turn 4, Mark Larkham, Stephen Johnson and Todd Kelly. Around to the back straight, the Adelaide straight on Bartels Road. This is where they'll pick up to 240 kilometres an hour. We might try and stay on board with Mark Scaife as we have a look at them going through the sweeper.
Marcus talked before about adjustments, and he didn't say what they were, obviously, because that's part of this game, but those adjustments could include a small variation in tyre pressure. They could include a change to the rear roll centre height in the car, or maybe sometimes somebody will reach in underneath and make a little change to shock absorber, either bump or rebound, just to make the car a little bit gentler on its rear tyres, change its characteristics a little. I've got a fair idea what they probably would have done, but they're not in a real hurry to tell anybody about it, which is fair enough.
After the first lap of the restart, we'll see the official order as they go through. It is Ambrose, Scaife, Bright and Richards. And Stephen Johnson makes up our top 5 positions. Everybody talked about, like Neil said, buying a ticket to the last quarter of this race, if you like. Most of the team managers will break it down into 2 halves. We can save the rears. No risk Saturday is probably the best way to describe this race day, because you need to set yourself up, and a move from Max Wilson on Glenn Seaton ends in tears.
See that one coming from 50 metres out there, because Max's car looked like it was very unsettled, and Seaton quite wisely just allowing the car to drift away from the corner. He doesn't want to back it up into the wall, and that's ended what was looking like a reasonable run. Here's the replay, and you can see that Max's car is unsettled. He had Murphy in behind him and nowhere to go except into the right rear quarter panel of Glenn Seaton's car, and that's at turn 4 at the end of Wakefield Street, and it's on back in the pack there as well, and Bright and Scaife getting stuck into it for 2nd and 3rd.
Some contact there on the front right of Jason Bright into the rear of Mark Scaife. We understand there's a bad sportsmanship warning to car number 10, Mark Larkham. And I was just thinking the last thing that Greg Murphy needed to do was get caught up in that tangle between Wilson and Seaton. Murphy has now done 3 drive-through penalties in pit lane. From top to bottom, it's around 30 seconds, so he's carted off a minute.
Just be patient, Jason.
A minute and a half. The PlayStation 2 race score indicates that Ambrose, Scaife, Bright, Richards and Johnson have all completed their 2 compulsory pit stops for tyres and fuel. Todd Kelly is in 6th, but he's only done it for fuel. The other guy in the top 12 is Garth Tander, who now gets the green light after completing both. Remember, the pit window opened at the end of lap 2. It will close after lap 57.
Ambrose making good gains on everybody here. These 3 cars that are scrapping for the minor placings are all affecting each other's performance, and all the time that blue car is just sneaking away ever so gently into the distance. Here's a replay. The Strathfield replay shows Jason Bright just tagging Mark Scaife and gets his left rear as they go through the right-hander at turn 9. This is looking backwards from Mark's car. Jason turns in, clunk. No big deal, but a little bit unsettling for both parties. Scaife will have temporarily had a spike in his heart rate and gone, and Bright will be doing much the same.
very close in this part of the field. As you look at Russell Ingall, he's in position number 7 with some race tape dangling off. And Craig Lowndes has rejoined. So the Ford Performance Racing team have been working on the Cat 6 car and got it back out to rejoin this race. Of course, he's well and truly out of the running. Jamie Whincup goes up the inside at turn 14 on Paul Morris. $100,000 damage done to the Paul Morris Ciramo Wines entry at Albert Park. Paul Dumbrell and Morris coming together at turn 2. Morris came off worse for wear. Now, Paul Wheel and Garth Tander are fighting for position here as well. That's 11 and 12.
Remember that Tander was making pretty good progress early in the race, and then on some fluid, we think he got crossed up on the way into one, went across the traffic island, almost rolled the car as we take this stop with Brad Jones, and ended up resting up against the wall, and that would have dropped him back in the track position order, and now he's trying to regain some ground. And the problem with this field is that whenever you give any of these guys track position, even one position, it's very hard to get them back. The cars are close, the drivers are close, and if you lose 3, 4, 5 spots or more, it's real hard work to get them back.
Cameron McConville goes diving up the inside at turn 9 and takes over from Mark Larkham. So McConville is holding down position 8 at the moment. Probably would have picked up a shot or two there.
It's got a lot of roll in Russell Ingall's car, hasn't it? It's quite a soft-looking car.
Didn't last long, the reinvention of Craig Lowndes and FPR. He got out of the garage, did 1 lap, and is now pulling the shutters down, I would say, on Saturday racing.
Oh, they'll probably just continue to experiment and try and find the source of the problem. Sometimes it can be quite simple, but quite difficult to find. It sounds strange, but it might only be something that temperature or pressure reveals, and you only get that when you're actually out on the racetrack.
I think if you are a Craig Lowndes fan and a Blue Oval fan, you can definitely take some heart that the Ford Performance Racing is only in its early days. They've just been working effectively around the clock to get that team up and running, a 3-car team. Big investment from ProDrive, which of course has such a stranglehold on many championships across the world, not to mention Formula 1 and World Rally. Now it's making an impact in V8 supercars, or hopes to. Damage there to Max Wilson's car as a result of that tag with Glenn Seaton, and he has been told to get in and fix it. It'll give us also a good view of the front splitter and what will happen to the Ford front splitters when they're damaged, because they're like a fat lip. They're a lot longer than last time around we saw them. I think they're around 20 mils or so, a little bit bigger than the Holden one.
There's a yellow flag out down here, and someone was buried, and it looked like a fairly ordinary position down there. We'll try and find out who that is for you. Someone had gone off the road in maybe turn 11.
Front bumper, they going to black flag here.
Yeah, so Max is being told to get in. And this mid-pack brawl is ugly at the moment. A lot of cars, a lot of contact, a lot of aggravation as people sort themselves out. Let's run through the order. It's Ambrose, Scaife, Bright, Richards, Johnson, Ingall, Kelly, McConville in 8th. Rick Kelly 9th, Paul Dumbrell inside the top 10, then Paul Wheel, Radisich, Tander, Murphy, Canto, Barguana, Wills, Whincup, Tratt, Wilson, this man here on screen. Another change being made to that car with a new front splitter being put on it. And further down, actually the road has got a bit of flame going there. So, Grant, what have you got?
Yeah, just got some news on the pit lane speed limiters down here. Now, talking to Kmart Racing, they were saying that their system should be foolproof and they shouldn't be able to trip over that 40-kilometre limit. Spoke to some of the officials, and they say what a few of the drivers are doing, although they're pulling on their pit lane speed limiter before they come into pit lane, the car is still decelerating, which obviously trips you over that 40 limit. But the Kmart Racing team say they don't even use full throttle when they come down using pit lane, and it doesn't push that limiter too hard because they have a set of LED lights. So they know, and they have tested that Greg Murphy should exactly do 40 kilometres an hour. So it's only going to be the data tonight that will prove which case. Over to Greg.
Grant, just to expand on that, I've been talking to some of the officials down here. They're being very cagey with me at the moment and giving away information about who allegedly did what speed in pit lane. What they can tell me is that the lowest jump, if you like, was only 1k an hour over the 40k speed limit. So they're getting pinged for just being 1 kilometre an hour over. They did say before this race started there would be no tolerance.
That's right, and you know, over is over, and that was the point that was made in the drivers' briefing this morning, and it was made at the team managers' briefing earlier in the weekend, that there's no longer going to be any tolerance And I suspected that the Murphy problem was in fact his arrival speed or flicking the switch off too early on his departure. But sometimes it's only got to be a very small amount. So if he's doing 40.1 down pit lane and it's registering on the laser gun, then that's enough for him to be in trouble. So it'll be curious to see exactly what that is when we get to the analysis of this race afterwards.
The PlayStation 2 race score on lap 50 of 78 has Marcus Ambrose, Mark Scaife and Jason Bright battling it out for 1, 2 and 3. Richards, Johnson and Engel are there. Todd Kelly, Cameron McConville, Rick Kelly and Paul Dumbrell make up our top 10. This is the first round of the V8 Supercar Championship for 2003. Hope you're enjoying it. There is 29 laps to go.
This is further back in the field in the Clipsal 500, and Mark Larkham there just turned around. Paul Wheel getting through there as well. Dumbrell was also in that pack. Larko just trying to gather it up again and get back in the race as Marcus Ambrose assumes control. 2.6 seconds his lead over Mark Scaife. And this is looking like a good result for Stone Brothers, but there are still 26 laps to go.
I can tell you, Woodsy,
just that curve in turn 2, Marcus. Watch the curve.
Just a couple of laps to go. In fact, on that lap that you just saw the end of, Marcus Ambrose posted another lap record time. A 1:23.507 was his last lap. While we're in the ad break, he already posted a better time than Mark Scaife in terms of overall lap records. Now he's bettered himself. 1:23.507. So as the fuel starts to burn away and those tyres really kick in, he came in for tyres, Marcus, on lap 35. He filled up on lap 28. So there you go. It's all starting to come together for Stone Brothers.
It's the fuel burn that's giving him the pace now, because the tyres will have well and truly passed their immediate peak speed. But as the fuel weight's coming off the car, he's gathering rhythm. And you know, there's been no incidents on the track just in the recent past, so the race line will be pretty clean. So that's very good performance, an excellent performance. And this car and this team, oh, and here we've got somebody down here in the kitty litter, and that's at turn 11.
That's Paul Romano.
Yeah, and it's straight ahead. It's actually behind the pit paddock area. It's probably out of harm's way, so I don't think it will necessarily produce a safety car. And they've got that big tow rope there, and they're going to drag it out of the way. This is Russell. There's the yellow flag flying for that incident there. The camera foreshortens it a little bit, but he's actually a long way from the racetrack there, which means that I think things will just proceed, which is good. And this is the battle for the minor placings at the moment. And Todd Kelly, Russell Ingall, Stevie Johnson, Stephen Richards are all in this little battle. There's a bit of a gap between a couple of them here and there, but this is pretty lively as well. The point that I was going to make a moment ago, Matthew, is that both Marcus and Mark, in their respective cars, there are ominous looking clouds in the background there on the Adelaide Hills as well. Their cars have looked pretty terrific all weekend, and I've had a look around the circuit on a couple of occasions, and the cars and the drivers of those cars are very in tune with the situation. I think they've got it very finely adjusted, and I'd say that it's a pretty even battle between them at the moment. If anything, Ambrose just getting away by literally millimetres per lap. That's about all it is.
Go back a couple of weeks ago to when we were all down at Albert Park there, and one of the Ford Performance Racing, no, that's Mark Noske. Car number 23 has had to park it on the side of the main straight, which is kind of okay for his pit crew. They only have to walk 5 or so metres to give him some instructions. He's fired it back up again. If you go back a couple of weeks, the two men who had troubles at Albert Park, and as I said, effectively it is only a shakedown, Marcus Ambrose and Mark Scaife. HRT threw everything they had at that car on Sunday in terms of trying to change things around and see exactly what the problem was. The biggest problem for Jeff Breck and the boys was that the rain came down and forced a no-race result. We only got a couple of laps. So Marcus Ambrose and Mark Scaife have used the time in the last 2 weeks to get back to the top. HRT and Stone Brothers resume hostilities, and it continues right here between Ingall and Kelly.
And Mark Noske has climbed out of that car and is walking across the pit lane and back to the pit garage at the moment. Order at the moment, Ambrose, 2.5 seconds is the margin to Scaife, then Bright, Richards, Johnson, Ingall, Kelly, McConville, Rick Kelly, Paul Dumbrell. That's the top 10. That's Paul Dumbrell tucked in behind Rick there at the moment. This is a good effort from Paul Dumbrell. And Rick Kelly moving from Young Lions program, well documented, into the Kmart program this year. Gee, it's getting bumpy up there between turns 5 and 6. I reckon that's actually got worse in the last 365 days. really unsettles the car now.
If you get yourself close enough to Paul Dumbrell's car number 8, on the right-hand side, there's some superficial damage and some blue streaks down the side of the Castrol Perkins Commodore. It actually happened in practice. The very first lap, his out lap, he went out here in his first championship or full championship season. He went out and caught the tyre barrier around turn 10 and put some blue paint alongside. So he had all sorts of dramas in his initiation here. And Marcus Ambrose has another new lap record. On lap 56, a 1:23.478. He and Mark Scaife traded lap records in just the last couple of laps while we've been watching this group around the bottom half of the top 10. So 1:23.478. Marcus Ambrose now has a 2.9-second lead over Mark Scaife.
On board with Greg Murphy, who doesn't do a drive-through penalty in pit lane, which is rare.
13th position. I don't think we've heard the end of that one, Neil. I reckon that's going to go long into the 9.
It's real easy to be cheeky in the commentary box, isn't it?
Oh, you finally got that one, have you? You stepped out of the car so you can come up here and be cheeky.
Some days just end up like that for some reason, and nobody ever quite knows how and why it unfolds that way. But, you know, it's just been an ugly afternoon for Greg. You see his drink bottle hose there, just down to the left. A lot of the people in the field have got, as you mentioned before, I think much more sophisticated cooling mechanisms in the car than they've had in previous years. And certainly on the Holden Racing Team cars, I had a look at that this morning with Jeff Grech. They've got a dry ice and cool air system to blow cool air into the helmet. But we'll have a listen to Murph at work in the Kmart Commodore as he heads up through 9, 10, 11.
Footwell, get an idea of the unique driving style of Greg Murphy.
Well, there aren't too many left foot breakers in the field. Marcus Ambrose does a bit of left foot braking, and he's got a brake pedal in the middle of his thing that looks like it's out of a Bedford truck. It's about 8 inches across. And this is a very rare sight in V8 Supercar. Not too many people do it, but Greg is a past master. He's been doing it for a long time. There it is, left foot brake, flip the throttle, downshift. Go back to the footrest, which is on the extreme left. You can just see that there's a little plate over there that helps him balance his body. You don't want too much preload on that clutch pedal or it'll knock around the clutch thrust bearing. And you see the judicious use of the throttle, just 600 horsepower, worn tyres, ease it on gently. A little touch of the clutch pedal so that he can flat shift because he's not lifting his right foot at all. Do not attempt this at home. Scatter the gearbox in your Ford Laser from one end of the shopping centre to the other.
And send the bill to Murph. That's just what he needs after this afternoon, doesn't he? A little bit of trouble for Paul Dumbrell. That was a great sight as Greg Murphy rounds him up and now gets involved in a bit of door-to-door action. Dumbrell gets through, though, at turn 10. So we're down around the 13 position mark. Dumbrell is trying to hold on to position number 12. Murphy ducks up on the inside at 14 and puts Dumbrell out onto the grass.
He gives the young Paul a short back and sides there and sends him out to the grass. So Paul wisely decided to just stay away from potential contact on the outside there. So this is a lively little battle, and they are down the order at the moment. Murphy's 12th, which is actually still remarkably strong given the number of times that Greg has had to come to the pit lane for those speeding infringements.
You would have heard since we started this race that many people think it's all about the last 20 laps. Well, we're inside that period right now. The 20-lap shootout to the end of the Clipsal 500, race 1, and at the moment, it's well and truly in the hands of Marcus Ambrose. We'll take a break on your home of motorsport and come back to the streets of Adelaide for round 1 of the V8 Supercar Championship, brought to you by VB.
In round 1 of the V8 Supercar Championship, it's been quite a battle for those guys in the middle of the pack. Up ahead of him on the track is Simon Wills, one of the new drivers for Team Dynamic, the new team. But in front is Marcus Ambrose for Stone Brothers, losing time to Mark Scaife. In 2 laps, he's lost about 1 second And then we have Jason Bright in third place. He's 5.5 seconds behind Scaife. So Scaife safely in second, but may be soon challenging for the win as we are on lap 64, or we are on lap 65. We've had 64 laps down.
He's certainly lost a little bit of pace in the last couple of laps, Bill. There you can see the comparison between Ambrose and Scaife. Critical end of the race now, where depending on how you've looked after everything in your car, depends on what you've got left to fight with. This is Paul Wheel in the second team Brock entry, and he's currently 10th.
He's got Paul Radicic behind him. Greg Murphy's also there, and Paul Dumbrell as well.
It's still not front of mind who's in what at the moment, is it? There's so many different combinations in 2003.
I tell you what got us big time was Team Better Electrical, if you like, has spread itself out across four cars now. Sponsorship of Team Brock cars, of course, Briggs Motorsport cars. The battle group, there you go, that's the one we're looking at, 9th through to 12th. Rick Kelly, the Kmart Commodore, taking over the seat from his brother, who moved further up pit lane to HRT. And Paul Wheel and Jason Bright down at Team Brock. Just trying to get a few things pieced together. Another brand new team that was formed only 8 or so weeks ago, and really they handpicked a lot of their staff. Been so many staff changes. They've had a lot of overnighters trying to fix this thing, fix the cars, and after Paul Wheel had a turn 1 crash in the race at Albert Park, they took it straight back to the factory and started working straight away to get it ready in time. In fact, if you go up and down pit lane, you'll hear stories like that and eyes popping out of heads everywhere, because quite a few people have been scampering last minute.
Well, it's because
4 a.m.ers.
So many new cars and so many new combinations, and the workload has been huge. One of the things that picked up on is that the traffic, and look at this battle between Kelly and Ingle, who now Kelly, who's been working on it for a lot of laps, finally gets the job done. Slow traffic is affecting the lap speed of the leaders, and that might be one of the reasons why Ambrose and Scaife, the gap is seesawing, and there it is, laps 62, 3, 4 and 5. Ambrose the reference and Scaife the man on the chase. And you can see there's a seesawing battle really in analysis. And one of the problems for Marcus is that he is the first bloke on the spot. He's the one that has to wake up the back markers to the fact that they're going to be caught and cleaned up. And to some extent that might advantage Mark Scaife, because the crust breaking has already been done by the race leader.
Watching their driver is Dick Johnson. It's been a good start to the weekend for Steve. Has he got the pace, and can he make an improvement towards the end of the race, do you think?
Well, we'll just wait and see what happens, Rusty, but you know, this is all pretty new to us. It's a brand new car, and there's a lot of development work to go on yet, but we just need that other half second. If we can get that, we'll be right there. But at this point in time, I'm just happy that they're finishing.
Beyond that, Max has had a tough day though.
Yeah, Max had a bit of a tough day. He had a tough day yesterday. Starting from the back of the grid's never a lot of fun, and he just needs a little bit of coaching along the way, and we sit down and talk to him. If he stays off the ripple strips and away from those cones, he'd stop knocking the front spoilers around while we ride.
All right, let's hope the numbers stay looking good for Steve in between here and the finish.
We can only hope for the best. Thanks, mate.
Well, that actually answers one of the questions in the back of my mind. You can see the front of Max Wilson's car, because he had contact with Glenn, didn't he, earlier on, and that was obviously one of the bits of splitter damage, but I had a feeling that he might have gone over something, and the splitter's all coming adrift again. And, yeah, Max is very 12 tenths, and Dick sort of pointed out in his subtle way that, you know, if he stays off the curbs and the cone markers, he won't have so much damage, but you can hear it flapping and beating around in the background there, and that's a real drama. Aero efficiency on these cars, even though they don't have a huge amount of aero relative to a single-seater racing car, you still can't give any downforce away. It's going to slow you right down.
In a way, we were robbed yesterday throughout the qualifying session of a Max Wilson Express coming through the field, which he did consistently in his first season in V8 Supercars last year. They had a component failure. They broke the main shaft and got it back in there. They could have got it back out in time to give him a few laps in qualifying, but it was just too dangerous. So that's why Max Wilson started down the back of the grid.
Here's the little battle group looking at there, and Murphy's just still looking around on the inside a bit of Radisic, who's chasing Wheel, and Dumbrell's just tagging along for the ride. Because of the way the points score is structured this year, there's not big steps between various positions on the track, so it's important to stay at them. One of the good reasons and a great incentive for Greg Murphy not to throw the towel in earlier in the day, because you're at dummy spit level when you've had the 3 drive-throughs, but he's pressed on, and he's out there and circulating in a valuable position at the moment.
And in terms of points, if they stay where they are and he finishes up in 12th position, Murphy will end up with 63 points for 12th position. The winner gets 96 points out of this race. So when it's split in half, they cascade by 3 points all the way down. And I was just thinking to myself as they were coming around there in that straight line, just how behaved they are.
Oh, well, the minute you say that, you can be guaranteed
they'll all go loose and crazy.
Will short circuit.
I think it's also got a lot to do with Saturday, and like I mentioned, most of the opinions that were canvassed up and down pit lane was, don't forget that race 1 counts for grid positions for race 2, and in overall terms of the round winner, that goes to the race 2 winner here at the Clipsal 500. So now some moves coming along. Paul Wheeler's right up the end of Rick Kelly.
Yeah, this is not resolved by any stretch of the imagination, this one, and each one of these guys, you can see he's got the body language that suggests he's looking for action, and Murphy's one of them as he looks for the inside run on Paul Radisic and makes it stick as we go on board and see the better electrical Falcon forced into an awkward position to be wide at turn 7. Paul Dumbrell buys into it as well, so Radisic, if he's made a slow corner exit off 7, could be vulnerable to the Castrol car. He's not, and Murphy moves up a spot. 8 laps to run. The order at the moment: Ambrose, Scaife, Bright, Richards, Johnson, Kelly, Ingle, Conville.
Ingle in 7th position. You'll see it tick over on your PlayStation 2 race score. So we're getting to the closing stages. Most of the field has been pretty well behaved to start the season. 8 laps to dash to the end of round 1. Will they stay the same? Will they keep their cool? Can Marcus Ambrose bring it home for Ford in the first race of 2003?
13th position, unlucky for Paul Wheel, a little wide and just brushing the rubber on exit. In fact, at the time he was trying to get hold of Greg Murphy. He's now dropped the position. Paul Radisic was able to capitalise on that situation, and so too did Dumbrell. That's been an ongoing contest. Marcus Ambrose expanding his lead now. Probably was traffic then, as Neil pointed out, when he was losing time to Mark Scaife. Now he's opened the gap. Scaife comfortably ahead of Bright, so there's quite a bit of separation at the front of the field. Stephen Richards in 4th place, and Steve Johnson makes up the top 5.
With John Bow, hasn't been a good day for you at all, has it?
Well, it's not a good start to the series, is it? But I guess we had to stop in the end. Since about lap 5, the steering's been getting less and less mobility, like it's seizing up. For some reason, the steering rack, which is different than we used last year, so I don't know why, but it's been getting tighter and less lock, so I got to the stage where I couldn't get into the pit lane, I couldn't get around the hairpins. It's bizarre. I nearly hit the wall about 20 times, so rather than risk the car, if you know, you write it off, you can't race tomorrow, so we'll try and fix it, but I don't know why it's happened.
So it's not linked to the incident with Russell Ingle, and how do you feel about that?
Well, obviously how I feel. I mean, the damage on my car's right at the back. It was out of order, and I certainly think that there should be a penalty applied. I mean, I don't have any axe to grind with Russ. He's a good bloke, and I like him, but if there's a set of rules, there's a set of rules, you know. He should pay the price.
Better luck tomorrow, Jay.
Righto, mate.
So Marcus Ambrose continues what should be a good weekend for Stone Brothers Racing. They won the Konica race here on the Adelaide Street Circuit last night, and just show you those times there over the last 4 laps. So Marcus Ambrose is getting green boxed, if you like, by Mark Scaife, but the gap overall is still 4.5 seconds.
That level of variance is a good indication that traffic is playing a part here at the moment, Matthew, because normally without the traffic interference, both drivers and their cars will be very consistent. You might see a 10th or 2, sometimes 3, but most often you don't see much. Now, this is the little group that Marcus went through before, and now Mark Scaife has to deal with them. And all this, that's all time, burn, burn, burn. And the minute you're blinded by another car, as he was there by Craig Baird, it just makes it that much more difficult to extract the perfect lap time. He's coming up now onto Greg Ritter in the 0-0 car. And
great job, Mark. Great job. Just keep it going.
Greg Ritter's seen the blue flags being waved there. He's allowed Mark to use the race line on the entry to 1, which is pretty handy.
The difference now is 5 seconds between Ambrose and Scaife, so that was a bird's eye view of exactly what we're talking about.
Notice he doesn't have the instrumentation on the steering wheel any longer. He's in this new car, or this hybrid car that they've got. He's actually got the dash set back in the more conventional position, and it's PI research instrumentation that they use in the HRT car. I had a look around the car this morning. It's one of the bonuses. You can actually go into other garages when you don't wear a team shirt. So
they let you in, do they?
They let you in. It's a beautiful presentation in their cars, and shortly they'll ultimately have a definitive VY model, which won't be a conversion. And this is the Stephen Ellery car, which rejoined after that shock absorber problem, and he's coming down into the final turn there, turn 14 at the hairpin, and he's got it all crossed up, pointing the wrong way. And there's another angle of it there.
Couldn't compete in the final 1.5 races that we had at Melbourne because he had a pinched nerve in his neck, Stephen Ellery, and funnily enough, I actually think that it might have been a result of the stack that he had here 12 months ago into the sweeper wall. A long time to find out the problem, but he got to a point in Melbourne where he just simply couldn't change gears, which is a slight problem. Marcus Ambrose has Mark Scaife still 5 seconds behind him.
Saw a calculation somewhere in the last 24 hours of something in the order of 1,800 gear changes here across the event. So if you've got some pain anywhere in the system as a result of gear changing, then you multiply it by just 1,800. Not very pleasant.
Well, he's been doing intense physio since he bailed out of Albert Park, and hopefully they've rectified that problem. But today it's been a case of a few mechanical problems for Stephen Ellery. Jason Bright is in 3rd position after starting from pole. He's got some bit of a red flash across the rear end of the Team Brock Better electrical car.
It's got turn 4 written on the back of it.
Certainly does, and he is 10 seconds behind our race leader. We've had 8 races here on the Adelaide Street Circuit for the V8 supercars, and at the moment the score goes this: Holden 7, Ford 1. Craig Lowndes won a race here in a Falcon in 2001, and he's been the only one to do so for the Blue Oval boys. That will change in just a couple of laps. We're on board with Stephen Richards, who's holding down 4th position at the moment.
He was very strong here last year as well, if you recall, and I think he was on the podium in the overall result at the end of the race weekend. I think he got a 3rd position as well. So, and he's a very strong endurance racer with a couple of Bathurst victories to his credit, and he's coming up onto the back of Stephen Ellery there at the moment, and Ellery's car looking very unsettled into that last hairpin. Richo's very happy in this team, and he's got a good car, and I think he's one of the drivers that's pretty comfortable about the fact that he knows and understands this model car pretty well at the moment, and this is a very good, strong way to open his account. Ditto for this man, Stephen Johnson, who's 6th at the moment, just in front of Russell Ingall and just behind Todd Kelly. There's Todd, turn 4. That's the red wall on the outside we talked about before that Jason Bright autographed earlier in the race.
Those details that you're asking about as far as gear changes per lap, it's around 24 changes per lap, so for 78 laps, 1,872. So times that by 2 across the weekend, and there you go.
It's a lot.
It equals a lot.
See, Russell's got his left-hand window down, and a lot of the windows have actually, funnily enough, electric control, and he's probably reached the stage of the race where it's a little less than pleasant inside that car, so he's gone for a bit of additional ventilation, which when they actually do aero tests, when you drop the left-hand window, it really kills some of the performance on the rear wing, and it obviously changes the amount of pressure inside the cabin, but sometimes you just need the air, and you're better off to have a breathing driver and maybe lose 0.5% of aero efficiency, because often you find an engineer giving you a lecture about why you should keep it up, and you go, well, that's great, but breathing's real handy.
Although Mark Scaife seems to do without it for the one-lap dash, so it can't be too vital across 3.22 kilometres. Marcus Ambrose is now closing out the final stages of this race. Their back markers in front of him down Bartels Road, the Adelaide Straight. The lights are on. If I remember correctly, that's where Marcus Ambrose ended up his 2002 campaign when he had a DNF in race 2 at Adelaide. Had to park the car halfway down Bartels Road. Turn 9 for the last time.
It's David Bernard just circulating slowly there in the FTR car. It's some problem. They're going to get to the finish, but not very fast.
He started from 3rd on the grid. They had their problems at Albert Park in the non-championship round. Stone Brothers, as far as Marcus's car went, they went away and fixed them. And they've come back for the first round of 2003. And have said to the Red Rockets, you better look out. And the season starts with a dash of blue as Marcus Ambrose wins race 1 of the Clipsal 500.
Absolutely brilliant. And the car tweak was just right, mate. So, good start to the season where we left off in 2002. He's back in the pit.
Exactly, because Marcus Ambrose won the final round of 2002. The ultimate at Sandown. He had a clean sweep, with qualifying first, pole, and then 2 race wins. So they finished off 2002 and said, let's keep the momentum going for 2003. The BA Falcon gets its first official win of the championship. Russell Ingall took a BA Falcon to victory, as I mentioned, in the non-championship round. And it's lights flashing for Marcus Ambrose. Rusty.
Well, the cheers have gone up down here at Stone Brothers Racing. Ross, how good does that feel?
Yeah, that's excellent. We've never ever won this race. We've been in town a few times, but never been invited to the party, so this time that's good.
Just talk us through the day. You know, did it go according to your strategy?
Yeah, we thought our car was pretty good, but in that first stint before we done fuel, it wasn't quite right, so we made a small adjustment. After that, the car was excellent, and our guys done a good tyre stop, which got us out ahead of Scapey, and I think that helped us on our way.
How much were the fingers crossed on the run home?
Oh, the fingers are crossed the whole time, because this is good for the team, because the guys have worked so hard.
Great stuff, Ross, and have a good one tomorrow, hey?
Thanks. Yep.
That's the real key to it. Have a good one tomorrow, because the job's only half done, and that's the big task down here. A big engineering task as well, because you know, just getting these cars through the end of a grueling 250k race around a real tough track, and then multiply it by 2 and go through that whole process, and it's hard on the driver body as well. But this is a great moment for Marcus Ambrose and Stone Brothers Racing, and another strong performance from Mark Scaife. There's Jim.
Look at Jimmy Stone.
He's thrilled. These guys work hard. They work very hard, and acknowledges his rival Mark Scaife, which is great sportsmanship. And Holden Racing team would be happy with their opening account as well. In the end, the margin was only 2.2 seconds, but it actually stabilised on the lap previous at just over 4 seconds. So Marcus unbuckles. He's got the safety net down. Those levers in front of the anti-roll bar controls to the front and the rear, the gear lever. Wriggles out of this thing. It'll be pretty hot and dusty, but his fitness has been up to it. Greg Rust will be with him shortly, and we'll get a word with Marcus Ambrose. It's an excellent drive from him, and that car just looked beautiful. And he's going to do an Elio Castro Neves here. Is he going to climb the fence? And and there's still a few Ford fans out there that have had some pent-up energy that they've wanted to expend for a while. And as he said himself in the cockpit a minute ago, we're picking up where we left off after that great run at Sandown last year. Greg?
Well, Marcus Ambrose, a fantastic result. How did the car feel towards the latter part of the race? Everything seemed to be good.
Yeah, the car was better than me, that's for sure. You know, there was a real stalemate there for a while, and Scaife pushed me all the way, you know. It's quite incredible, you know, after 78 laps, you still got to push on, and what a credit to the team, you know. We had a really bad Grand Prix, bounced back with a win, you know, just sets our championship off.
We might get you to take your helmet off here, and we'll keep talking to you, but the race itself just seemed to be faultless as far as the team was concerned. The car, you know, the debut of the brand new BA, we saw it at Melbourne at Albert Park, but it's fantastic here in an endurance race. You couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah, just fantastic. You know, the team won the Grand Prix and we won here as well, so we're only halfway through though. We've got another leg to go tomorrow.
How do you feel?
Well, I feel pretty tired right now, but you know, we'll bounce back tonight and you know, got it to be done.
Super start to the year, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
Marcus Ambrose, though, throws the first punch of the Clipsal 500. Can he deliver a knockout blow tomorrow?